there is a specific type of frustration that really defines the modern experience for you and me and pretty much everyone listening. It is the sensation of having access to infinite information, yet feeling somehow less capable of solving complex problems.
You have all the data in the world, but none of the clarity.
That is the perfect way to phrase it.
Yeah.
You go to a doctor for chronic fatigue, and they look at your blood work, the biology. Or you talk to a therapist, and they look at your childhood, the psychology. You speak to a career coach, and they look at your work environment, the systems.
And the confusing part is that every single one of them is correct.
But none of them can actually solve the problem on their own. They're all holding a piece of the puzzle, but they simply refuse to look at the other pieces. We are drowning in partial truths.
Which is a very dangerous place to be.
It is. So today we're doing a deep dive into a framework designed to fix this exact fragmentation. We are exploring integral theory and the AQAL model. The promise here is bold. It claims to be a meta map for reality. We want to find out whether this map can actually help you navigate the chaos of your life, or if it's just another philosophical abstraction.
I can assure you it is much more than an abstraction. If you look at the history of human knowledge, we have spent the last few centuries specializing. We sliced reality into thinner and thinner wedges. Biology, sociology, economics, theology, each discipline sharpened its own lens.
That specialization was necessary to gain depth, surely.
It was absolutely necessary, but the cost was breadth. We lost the ability to see how the pieces fit together. Integral theory, particularly the work of Ken Wilber, is an attempt to put the Humpty Dumpty of human knowledge back together again. It is not about telling you what to think. It is about showing you where your thinking might be incomplete.
That concept of incompleteness is really the hook for this entire deep dive. You often feel stuck, not because you are wrong, but because your view is too narrow. The core of this theory is the AQAL model. That stands for all quadrants, all levels. Let us start with the quadrants. The premise is that you can look at any single event in the universe from 4 distinct perspectives.
These are 4 irreducible dimensions of reality. You cannot reduce one to the other. Imagine a grid. On the top, you have the individual. On the bottom, you have the collective. On the left, you have the interior, which is the subjective. And on the right, you have the exterior, the objective.
We should walk through these one by one to make it concrete for the listener. Let us start with the upper left quadrant, the interior individual.
This is the I space. It is your immediate first-person experience, your thoughts, your memories, your values, your sense of purpose.
So if you are feeling anxious about a presentation at work, that anxiety exists in the upper left quadrant.
Correct. No surgeon can cut you open and find the anxiety. They can find the correlates of anxiety, the elevated heart rate or the cortisol, but the feeling itself is purely interior.
Which naturally leads us to the upper right quadrant, the exterior individual. This is what the surgeon actually sees.
This is the it space. This covers your brain chemistry, your cortisol levels, your behavior, your physical body. If we hook you up to an fMRI machine, we are observing you from the upper right. The mistake people often make is thinking that the brain is the mind.
That they are the same thing.
But integral theory says no. The brain is the exterior view. The mind is the interior view. They arise together, but you cannot cure a crisis of meaning with a pill alone because meaning is an interior reality.
That covers the individual experience.
Yeah.
But we are social creatures, so the model expands to the bottom half of the grid, the collective. This seems to be where things get incredibly messy in the real world.
Because this is where we move from I to we. The lower left quadrant is the interior collective. This is culture. It includes our shared values, our mutual understanding, our unwritten rules.
Think about the difference between a chaotic tech startup and a very rigid government agency.
The difference is not just the people working there. It is the intersubjective agreement on just how we do things here. You cannot physically touch culture, but it exerts a massive force on human behavior.
And finally, that brings us to the lower right quadrant, the exterior collective.
These are the its, the systems, the economy, the laws, the technological infrastructure, the environment. These are the objective, measurable structures that govern how groups interact.
So to summarize the grid, if the upper left is your psychology and the lower left is your culture, the lower right is the sociology and economics.
And the upper right is your biology.
The power of this meta framework becomes obvious when we look at why we fail to solve problems. Let's apply this to something very tangible for you listening, the modern crisis of burnout. If I am burnt out, how does a non-integral approach fail me?
Burnout is the perfect diagnostic test for this model. If you go to a psychiatrist, they might prescribe medication. That addresses the upper right, your biology. It might provide relief, but it is only 25% of the solution.
If you go to a mindfulness coach, they teach you to meditate.
That addresses the upper left, your internal state. Again, it is useful, but it is partial.
Because neither of those interventions changes the fact that your boss expects you to answer emails at midnight.
That expectation is the lower left, the culture of your workplace. And neither the pill nor the meditation changes the fact that the economy is unstable and the cost of living is rising, which forces you to work longer hours just to survive.
That is the lower right of the system.
If you try to solve burnout solely by fixing your mindset, you are trying to solve a four-quadrant problem with a one-quadrant solution. You will inevitably fail. The burnout is not just in your head. It is in your body, your culture, and your economic system simultaneously.
This completely explains the widespread frustration with the modern self-help industry. We are constantly sold solutions that pretend we exist in a vacuum. A guru telling you to just manifest it ignores the systemic barriers of the lower right quadrant.
And someone telling you to just hustle harder ignores the biological limits of the upper right quadrant. It creates a terrible cycle of shame. When the partial solution fails, we naturally blame ourselves. We think we did not meditate hard enough or we did not hustle enough.
The integral map relieves that pressure. It allows you to step back, look at your life, and ask where the blind spot is. Maybe your mindset is great and your biology is optimized, but you are embedded in a toxic relationship culture or a failing economic system.
You cannot personal growth your way out of a systemic problem, just as you cannot engineer your way out of an emotional crisis. All four quadrants must be aligned.
So the all quadrants part of the AQAL model is about breadth, seeing the horizontal spread of reality, but the model also includes all levels. This introduces a vertical dimension to the map. And this part feels a bit more controversial because it implies a hierarchy.
It does imply a hierarchy, but we must be very careful with how we define that word. We are not talking about a hierarchy of human worth or human dignity. We are talking about a hierarchy of complexity and depth.
How do we clearly distinguish between simply having a different perspective and actually operating at a different level?
Think of the quadrants as 4 different camera angles in the exact same scene. Levels are like the resolution of the camera itself, or better yet, think of altitudes on a mountain. If you are standing at the base of the mountain, you see the trees immediately around you. If you hike halfway up, you see the entire forest. If you stand at the peak, you see the entire horizon.
The view from the peak is not right, while the view from the base is wrong.
The view from the peak simply contains more perspective. It is more inclusive.
The sources refer to this as the principle of transcend and include. This sounds somewhat like a biological process.
It is fundamental to how the universe evolves at every level. Atoms join together to form molecules. The molecule includes the atoms, but transcends them to become something entirely new. Cells join to form organisms. Letters join to form words. Words join to form sentences.
At each stage of development, you do not lose the previous stage. You wrap it in a deeper, more complex context.
In human terms, this is developmental psychology. We start as infants, move to childhood, then adolescence, then adulthood, and this vertical growth happens in all 4 quadrants.
Let us look at the interior individual quadrant, the I space.
In that space, our moral reasoning expands over time. We move from being egocentric, where I care only about myself, to ethnocentric, where I care about my tribe or my nation, to world-centric, where I care about all human beings regardless of their race or creed.
The conflict in our society arises because we assume everyone we interact with is operating from the exact same altitude.
That assumption is the source of most political and cultural gridlock we see today. We often think we are having a debate about objective facts when we are actually experiencing a clash of developmental levels.
Take a global issue like climate change. A world-centric perspective views the Earth as a single, interconnected system.
But if you are speaking to someone operating from an ethnocentric or an America First perspective, the global argument literally does not land. They are prioritizing the immediate protection of their specific tribe. That is a valid developmental need for safety, but it is less expansive than the global view.
This helps explain why simply throwing facts at people does not change their minds. If I am arguing from a different level of complexity, I am essentially speaking a completely different language.
You are, and the critical mistake we make, especially those who consider themselves progressive or highly educated, is that we try to repress the lower levels. We look at tribalistic or traditional viewpoints with pure disdain.
But the rule of the model is transcend and include. You cannot simply skip a stage of human development.
You cannot build a world-centric society if people do not first feel secure in their ethnocentric belonging. If you try to erase the tribal need for safety and identity, it will inevitably rebel against you.
That is a profound diagnostic tool for understanding current political polarization. We're essentially watching a rebellion of the lower levels against a perceived imposition from the higher levels that completely failed to include them.
It is a massive failure of integration. A truly integral leader or thinker does not look down on traditional values. They recognize that traditional values like order, loyalty, and stability are the absolute necessary foundations for higher growth. You cannot build the penthouse if you blow up the basement.
Let's bring this back down to you, the listener. We have this massive map, 4 quadrants, multiple levels of complexity. How does one actually use this in daily life? It seems a bit overwhelming to constantly analyze reality through an 8-dimensional grid.
You do not need to overthink it in every single moment. You use it primarily when you are stuck. Think of it as a troubleshooting checklist. If a project at work is failing, run the integral diagnostic. 1, is it the people? Do they have the physical skills? That is the upper right.
2, is it their internal motivation? Do they actually believe in the mission? That is the upper left.
3, is it the culture? Is there genuine trust between the team members? That is the lower left.
And 4, is it the system? Do they have the budget and the structural tools required to succeed? That is the lower right.
Most managers only look at the upper right and lower right. They focus purely on skills and tools. They completely ignore the interior dimensions. The integral practitioner looks for the missing element across the entire board.
It redefines what it means to be an expert. In the past, the expert was always the specialist, the person who knew the absolute most about the smallest possible thing.
The future belongs to the integrator. We are rapidly entering an age of complexity where the specialist is increasingly being replaced or augmented by artificial intelligence.
Because AI is fantastic at the specific technical tasks of the right-hand quadrants. It can process objective data, optimize structural systems, and diagnose biological patterns far better than any human can.
But AI currently struggles immensely with the left-hand quadrants. It struggles with meaning, internal purpose, cultural nuance, and ethical depth.
So the human advantage shifts away from pure knowledge accumulation and moves toward pattern recognition.
The true human advantage is wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to hold multiple conflicting perspectives simultaneously without getting confused or defensive. It is the ability to look at a crisis and say, this problem is biological and cultural and psychological and systemic, and then orchestrate a solution that touches all of those bases.
This framework also challenges us to look deeply at our own personal development. The levels part of the theory suggests quite bluntly that we're not finished products.
That is perhaps the most uncomfortable realization of all. We tend to walk around thinking that our current worldview is the ultimate truth. When we were 5 years old, we thought we completely understood the world. When we turned 15, we realized our 5-year-old self was terribly naive.
Integral theory reminds us that our current self will one day look just as naive to our future self. There's always a higher altitude to reach. There's always a deeper level of compassion to unlock.
It suggests that the solution to the world's most pressing problems is not just inventing better technology or extracting more resources. The ultimate solution requires the evolution of human consciousness itself.
Because if we hand level 5 technology to a humanity operating at level 3 consciousness, we will likely self-terminate.
We see the risk of this with nuclear weapons, and we are seeing it again right now with AI. The power of our exterior technology has vastly outpaced the maturity of our culture and our internal wisdom. The primary imperative of our time is to accelerate our interior growth so it can safely match our exterior power.
This framework essentially serves as a call to grow up. It is not just an invitation to learn more information, but a demand to actually be more.
It is a call to become whole, to stop aggressively defending our favorite little slice of reality and start honoring the entire map. It requires a tremendous amount of intellectual humility. You have to admit that your truth is true, but it is partial.
And you have to be willing to genuinely listen to the truths of people you vehemently disagree with. Because according to this map, they are likely holding a piece of the puzzle that you are currently blind to.
For the listener who wants to start applying this tomorrow morning, the starting line is simply identifying your home base. We all naturally have a favorite quadrant.
Some of us love data in systems. We live comfortably in the lower right.
Some of us love feelings and introspection. We live in the upper left. Identify your home base and then consciously force yourself to visit the other 3 quadrants.
If you are a data person, walk into a room and ask what the emotional vibe is. If you are a feelings person, force yourself to ask what the economic incentives driving the situation are.
When you expand the map you are using, you immediately expand the possibilities for a solution. When you change the map, you change the world you perceive. And when your perception changes, your actions inevitably change.
There is a lot to digest here. The idea that our deepest frustrations, both personal and political, are actually structural failures of perception rather than just bad luck or bad people is a heavy one. But it is also deeply empowering. It means there is a clear way forward, provided we are willing to look at the whole picture.
The map is there waiting for us. We just have to be brave enough to actually use it.
We will leave it there for this deep dive. Take a look at your own life through the four quadrants this week. You might just find the exact missing piece you have been looking for. And as you do, remember that the next frontier of your personal growth is not about trying harder. It is about seeing more. When your perception expands, possibility follows.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Deep Thoughts Podcast. I hope you found insights and inspiration to take with you on your journey of self-growth. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to follow us on social media to stay updated on new releases and exclusive content. See you next time, where we'll continue to help you grow and explore your full potential.